This up today, Paul's journey to Rome, and we've only got to look at the last few places that he went to. And last week we left off at Melita, which is modern day Malta, and this is where they ended up crashing the ship and literally tore the ship in two. And God said that He would give Paul all those that traveled with him. And some swam to shore, some grabbed a hold of a board or whatever they could, and it says they all made it to shore safely. So God always good as His word. It doesn't matter what kind of, you would think, somebody out of 200, I think it's 276 souls, out of that many, you'd have thought one of them would have drowned. But if God says that they're all going to make it safe and sound, they all make it safe and sound, doesn't matter what the circumstances are. If God wasn't with Paul, because He told Paul, I'm going to give you all those that sail with you. Give you all those that sail with you. Paul hadn't been on that boat, it'd have been a disaster. So nobody lost their life there. So they're there on this island for like 3 months. They're not that far. They're not that far from Sicily when they're not that far from the boot of Italy. But yet they're stuck here for 3 months. And I think at this time it's just too rough. The seas are too rough to travel. There may not have been any ships coming that way until 3 months or the seasonal change. And so there they had to wait. But they were very commodious or very accommodating to Paul and those from the ship, which is a lot of people, 276 people to take care of. I am sure the fact that the Roman soldiers were on board may have helped their situation a little. It is Rome, by the way, that rules all this, including that little island of Malta. Now look at, let me turn over to Acts 28. And we don't have a lot of reading to do because, the majority of everything is already behind us. But in Acts 28, verse 12, verse 11, it said, after 3 months we departed in a ship of Alexandria, which had wintered in the isle, whose sign was Castor and Pollux. And I meant to look that up. It's like you look on the back of an airline, you'll see the signs, or on a ship will have a certain who they're connected with commercially. That's the same true here, and it has to do with Castor and Pollux. At one time I knew it, but it's gone. Anybody know? Huh? The note? Okay. Well, I think the note just tells you. Okay, here we go. He says, Gemini the twins, they are supposedly the sons of Zeus, making one of the 12 constellations. He's saying that's, of course, nothing like naming your company after two false gods. So that's what those represent, the two Gemini twins. And it says there in verse 12, and landing at Syracuse, we tarried there 3 days. Now, Syracuse is in Sicily. That's where they've traveled. They haven't gone very far, but I guess they just got to kind of make their way along as they go here. So they land at Syracuse. Now, I tried to look up the name Syracuse. I tried to look up all these names. Some of them are named after certain folks, generals, Caesars, or whatever. And sometimes you can't find out the actual meaning of their name, but Syracuse means to feel ill. So, has anybody been to Syracuse, New York? Does it make you feel ill? Did you get ill? Anyway, so they're there at Syracuse. Now, this is not Syracuse, New York. This is Syracuse, Sicily. 3 days there. And it was the capital of the Roman province of Sicily in that day. Palermo is now the capital of Sicily. So things do change over time. Cicero was like a lawyer. He was a talker. Cicero was a talker. Very educated in Rome, educated in Greece. He was born in Italy. And he said about Syracuse and this is about 100 BC when he was born, and he said that Syracuse was the greatest of the Greek cities and the most beautiful of all cities. Now, maybe he was a little bit, gave favor because he's born in Italy and there was Sicily, I don't know, but Syracuse was equivalent to the size, equivalent size to Athens, Greece. So this was one big metropolitan city. Of course, Sicily, the whole island there, is the largest island in the Mediterranean. Okay, now I've said, well, this is the largest island. Well, Melita or Malta was the largest in a chain. Sicily is the largest island in the Mediterranean, 9,927 square miles. It's equal in size to Massachusetts or New Hampshire, or twice the size of Hawaii. So it's a pretty big place. Let's see. Today, it has the largest population of any island. There's 5 million people in Sicily. Are there a lot of Italians or Sicilians in Syracuse, New York? No? You sure? No. You wouldn't know an Italian if he said, "Hada," and slapped you. Oh, the college, okay. Because, you know, when you come to the New World, why would you call it Syracuse when, you know, you're from York? So you call it New York. Just my thought. I thought maybe there are a bunch of Italians or Sicilians there. So anyway, just wondering, because they called it Syracuse. Anyway, the most prominent landmark on Sicily is Mount Etna. Now, I don't know if I didn't realize this or not, but Mount Etna is one of Earth's most active volcanoes. It's about 11,000 feet high, and it's all the time. Something's going on with it. I can remember when it had a major eruption here not too awful long ago that stopped air travel through that entire area. Syracuse, Sicily is the birthplace of Archimedes. Didn't know that. That's around 287 to 212 BC. Famous for mathematics, physics, astronomy, mechanics, and engineering. He actually estimated pi. Don't ask me what that number is, because I don't know. 3 point something, 1.34. Oh, 3.14, and then it goes on. Okay. You say, who's this Archimedes guy? You know, it doesn't matter. So they spend what? I said 3 days there? They spend 3 days there, and then they come to, I don't know how you, Regium? Anybody got an idea? Ragu? It is Italian, right? Acts 28:13. He says there, and from thence we fetched a compass and came to Regium, and after one day the south wind blew and came the next day to Puteoli. I'm going to say Puteoli. So there's not much to say. The modern day Reggio Calabrim, I don't know. That's the name of it today. It's located on the very toe of Italy. So this is Paul's first contact on the continent, or should I say for Italy. He's been on the continent before. So this is his first contact, and he's only here for 1 day. Now, there's 2 reasons why they may have stopped there. One of them is that they didn't have the wind in their favor to continue, because it does say the next day a soft south wind or something like that blew, and they took off from there. But it may be that they had cargo to drop off. So they stopped there, dropped off the cargo, and said, you know what, we better wait a day and see if things are favorable to go on. And after a day, they left there. So let's talk about Puteoli. Puteoli is a Roman port in the Gulf of Naples. It is 180 miles northwest of Regium, modern-day Puzzuli. That's the modern name for it. So they went a considerable distance, and they said, I read something that said it would have taken them 26 hours to sail that distance back then. Acts 28, verse 13 and 14 says, "And from thence we fast the compass, came to Rhegium. After one day the south wind blew, and we came the next day to Puteoli, where we found brethren, and were desired to tarry with them 7 days, and so we went toward Rome." So, a couple things about the place, and we'll talk about these brethren. It said this is a harbor city Puteoli is a harbor city located in a caldera. You know, how many know what a caldera is? It's a volcano plane or whatever that they happen to be on. It could, and they were located in this caldera. It had 24 volcanic craters as part of its terrain. Puteoli was the chief harbor to Rome at this time. So where they've landed is where the ship was going to begin with. The name Puteoli means a couple separate different names: well hole or putrid, stinking. And because of the volcanic action going on there and all the sulfur, that's exactly what you get. Now, why there are brethren living there, I don't know. I wouldn't want to live there. The chief imports of grain and oriental wares, which came from Alexandria, or the chief imports were of grain and oriental wares, and they came from Alexandria, Egypt. So this is where Alexandria, Egypt, that line, this is where they did their business, or at least one line of it, where they showed up at this port to deliver their grain and their wares. So this is where they were headed all along. You know, it's a miracle they found Melita. That's a miracle of God. When you've got I mean, imagine how they can't see the stars, so they can't navigate. I mean, it's not GPS, man. They don't have that. They don't have any other way. They don't have communications and satellites. They have none of that. They have the stars, and without the stars, they're just sailing blind. And the fact that they landed at Melita is a miracle of God. I mean, that made me a believer right there. I mean, it's a wonder they didn't wind up someplace else. Who knows where? And it says that Paul found believers there and fellowship with them for 7 days. Now, that had to be extremely encouraging to Paul. But here's the thing. The fact that there are believers already there tells you that the gospel has been working in this area for quite a while. Remember, Paul wrote the book of Romans about 3 to 5 years before he ever shows up there. And you can imagine they have copied that thing and distributed that thing. It is all over Rome. I am certain of that. And maybe all over Sicily. So he finds brethren already there. They're waiting on him. And then they have after Puteoli, they wind up this place called the Appii Forum. Appii Forum. Look at verse 28:15. "And from thence, when the brethren heard of us, they came to meet us as far as Appii Forum and the 3 taverns, whom when Paul saw, he thanked God and took courage." I first read that, I thought, you know, a tavern to me has always been a bar. He saw 3 bars and took courage. I don't know. I don't think that's what it was. I know why he saw the brethren. That's what gave him courage. We're going to find out this ain't got nothing to do with bars. But the Appii Forum was a marketplace and a highway station to Rome. That's what it was. People maybe came to Puteoli, and from that point, they went to the Appii Forum, and from that point they traveled up to Rome. And I believe, it's about 43 miles from Rome. Now they named this after Appius Claudius Caecus the first, around 308 BC. So it's named after some ruler. Not only was there a roadway, but there was a canal alongside the road to float boats loaded with goods. So you had this, and I think that was like the Erie Canal type deal, where you have a canal built and you have mules pulling boats. I mean, it's a lot easier to pull something that's floating than it is to drag something along, or even on a wagon. A lot more, especially, we're going to find out this wasn't the best terrain to be hauling cargo, but it would be okay if you had it inside a barge or a boat. I mean, we're talking a small canal, but they just have mules hooked to it. And that's how they would get a lot of their goods up to Rome. They called it the Via Appii or Appii or Appi, I don't know. The way, the Appii Way, approximately 43 miles from Rome. The reason it wasn't a pleasant trip, and this is based upon other historians or people that wrote about it, evidently the innkeepers were just cheats. You know, it's like being at a ball game, you know, and you want a bottle of water and it's $5. That's probably low, probably more than that now. But they kind of got you because, you know, it's not like you can run out to the gas station and get one for $1.50. They kind of have you. And when they get off there at the Appii Forum or at the Appii Forum and where they're headed, there's not much they can do. They're kind of at the mercy of the innkeepers. Also, there is a long stretch of marsh. That's the reason for the canal. There's a long stretch of marsh. And it's called the Pontine Marsh. Pontine. This whole thing, they said the water was foul tasting. There was unbearable gnats. I'm thinking those were probably mosquitoes that were unbearable. And frogs all along the way. So it was not a pleasant final 43 miles to get to Rome. It was going to be stinky, nasty, foul-tasting water, unpleasant innkeepers, that kind of thing. Now here's the thing I thought about, the fact that Christians from Rome made the journey to meet Paul in such a place. Because some of them made it. Not all of them. We're going to find out that the rest of them met him at the Three Taverns. But some of them actually made it to the Appii Forum. And the fact that they went on that journey to this place shows the love of God in them. And that had to be extremely encouraged. The Bible says he was encouraged or he took courage. Is that the word he used? Yeah, he took courage. I know that if, when you're locked up or when you're being bound and persecuted, you know, and you see these brethren showing up and their support, I mean, they don't know if it's going to cause them persecution or not. Now, it didn't at the time. In fact, for quite a while, Paul's pretty footloose and fancy-free. Even though he's under guard, he's pretty much given quite a bit of freedom. The next place where they come after the Appii Forum, they're traveling this road, or kind of like a road, they come to the Three Taverns. This is where they met more of the brethren. And this is more like a rest stop. Now, they still got 31 miles to go, so they've only gone really around 12 miles. And they've already had to stop at this place called the Three Taverns. The Three Taverns represented three different businesses that was there. And if you can think, if you're traveling to Rome and you're going up, or you're going through inhospitable country, there's three things that you want in that day. One was a blacksmith, the other one was a general store, and the other was a refreshment house or an inn or flop house. I don't know, whichever. It probably just, they called it an inn. I don't know but those three things, and that's why they called it the Three Taverns. There were three businesses there. So another group of Christians were waiting on Paul here. Paul was encouraged that the brethren were there to greet him. Like I said, they still had 31 miles to go. Historical counts tell us that the marsh ate this place. Gone. It absorbed it. It devoured it. Now, supposedly, one of the popes kind of redid it. Why, I don't know. Did the place, but he doesn't know where it's at. It just kind of overtook it, and I mean, that happens at my place. If I wasn't out there with a weed eater going like this, I mean, it'd swallow my house after a while. So, anyway, so that takes us through the Three Taverns, and of course, they make their way to Rome. So we're going to spend just not a lot of time on Rome. We may get done early here and have a little time for fellowship. Rome, of course, is the capital city of the empire, not just of Italy. It's the capital city of the empire. And even then, and this is every source you'll ever check, it will tell you that Rome is known as the city of seven hills. Okay, that's not my opinion. That's what every Italian, Sicilian, or anybody that's ever visited the area will tell you. It is known as the city of seven hills. And that right there should tell the Christian that you can identify this place in the book of Revelation real quick. In chapter 17. In chapter 17, verse 9, it says, "And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The seven heads are seven mountains on which the woman sitteth." Okay? You say, well, it's talking about a woman. Well, look at verse 18. "And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth." And she's also called the eternal city. All right? But her demise is recorded right here in chapter 18. Not too eternal. Look at chapter 18, verse 16 to 19. "And saying, Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet." Purple and scarlet. Think about those colors. "And decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, for in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. And every shipmaster," and there's a lot of places there, harbors in Italy, a lot of places. "And every shipmaster and all the company and ships and sailors and as many as trade by sea stood afar off." Now this is in the future when John's writing this, makes you wonder why they're standing afar off. "And cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city?" You know, it's like you'd stand afar off too if you saw a mushroom cloud. "And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea, by reason of her costliness, for in 1 hour is she made desolate." That's the demise of the eternal city right there. And he tells the Christian, or he tells the believers, to rejoice that she was destroyed. She was guilty of all the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. You'll find out she's connected with every world war we've ever had. I mean, just because somebody names the name of Jesus, why in the world you'd think that that's necessarily Christian is beyond me. I thought this was interesting about Rome. Rome began as a growing kingdom, not an empire, but just as a kingdom that became a republic, which then became an oligarchy, kind of ruled by a group of men, and then an empire ruled by a dictator. I guess that's coming next for us, because, you know, we started out from a kingdom, right? You know King George? That started from a kingdom. Then it became a republic. That's supposed to be the kind of government we're living in. And then it went from a republic to an oligarchy, where 9 men determine what our rights and laws are. And then finally, an empire ruled by a dictator. I don't know if we're going to get that far, but it's kind of interesting. You know, we're like Rome in a lot of ways. We adopted a lot of their government, their system of government. And they started off, man, you were a free man. And you were judged by the law of the land. But we know that is not true anymore, even in America. In fact, the law of the land doesn't mean a thing. And neither does the Constitution. Rome was devoured within due to two parties that were forever divided. And I thought it was very interesting what these two parties were and their names. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, but one is the patricians or patricians. The word father comes from that, and that's where the word patriot comes from. The fathers. The patricians, call them that, were the founding populace or fathers. In our case, it'd be those old white men with jobs. You know, I love how that our country has so vilified these old white men. Those old white men that wrote the Constitution provided you all the freedoms, no matter what color you were, what religion you were. You were under that umbrella, and that was a bunch of old white men. There was no black men in there. There was no Orientals in there. There was no women in it. As far as I know, there wasn't one single sodomite either. Now, there might have been a whoremonger or two. But it's pretty something when the very people that provided you the freedom that you come back and now vilify them. Because you never would have had this where they came from, where they all come from. But then that was the patricians, and then there's the plebeians or the plebes. I didn't know that was a word. The plebeians. They were descendants of slaves, lower class, strangers looking for a better life. That sounds vaguely familiar of the left and the descendants of slaves, lower class, strangers looking for a better life. They could not get along, and they divided Rome. That's exactly what's happening in America. We are so divided, it ain't ever getting back together. It's impossible. Now, this is interesting to me about Rome, how it got its name. Now, supposedly, this is legend, that the very first ruler of Rome was named Romulus. Makes sense? Very first ruler, called it Rome. We saw that with Antiochus. He named everything. There's so many Antiochs. Told you we got one here in Ohio, right down the road. But there's one here that's a little bit more mystical. Romulus and Remus. It's the mythical story of two twin brothers born of the war god Mars. And Mars was the father. I didn't write down the name of the mother. I'm not sure if she had any divinity to her or not. They were abandoned and suckled by a she-wolf. You're going to tell me that Rome, you know what a wolf is in the Bible, right? It's a false prophet. Here these two twins were suckled by a she-wolf. The two brothers would eventually challenge themselves for dominance, and Romulus would rise up and kill his brother. A lot like Cain and Abel there, right? You know what Cain believed in? He believed in works. Abel's the one that offered the lamb. Rome is the home of Vatican City, the smallest city / state / country in the world. I don't know if there's even a smaller city than Vatican City. It's only, now evidently they have bought some land, because everywhere I ever looked, it was always 108 acres. That's always what I've quoted, but they've come back with 121 acres. I don't know if they stole that land or they bought it. There are 764 residents as of 2023. And it is a country. It is a state. We have an ambassador to this country. And it all lies within the city of Rome. Now, just as ancient Rome, the empire split between east and west. You know, I'm talking about ancient Rome, military Rome, you had an east and a west. Funny, that's the same thing you have today. You have the west, the Roman Catholic Church, then you have the east, the Eastern Orthodox Church. Two branches of the same church is what you have. Let's see. Roman Catholicism. Now, I don't know if this is considered, I think they're counting the Eastern Orthodox in this number. If they're not, then this number is a lot higher. When we talk about Eastern Orthodox, it'd be like Russia is Eastern Orthodox. Romania was Eastern, for the most part, was Eastern Orthodox. They also had Roman Catholicism there. There's probably, I don't know how many more different ones there are there. Ukraine, I think they're Orthodox. But there's quite a few in that area. In the Eastern Bloc countries, if you will, or the, what am I trying to say? Eastern Europe, that's what I'm trying to say. In Eastern Europe, there's a lot of Eastern Orthodox. And if it's counting those, it says there's 1.3 billion. 1.3 billion members. That's equivalent with what the Muslims boast. Now, I told you Paul wrote the book of Romans around AD 58 or 60, between those couple years there, and ended up arriving there approximately 3 to 5 years later. So Paul would have been very well known by believers at Rome, with his epistle being copied and read by thousands, or by hundreds, or even thousands. Now, I'll mention real quickly, I told you we could spend a month talking about everything about Rome, its history and all that. But I want to talk about the Caesar that happened to be there at the time Paul's incarcerated, and that's Nero. Of all the ones I've read about, Nero was, wow, the worst. This is a human being that you could despise even today. I can't even talk about it. The man was so disgusting, I can't even talk about it. But I'll give you a few things that he was known for. Now, Nero reigned between 54 and 68 AD. I mean, that is exactly the time that Paul would have been there, and right up until the time of Paul's death. And I've got a theory about that, just a theory. His full name was Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus. He was a known sodomite. Even though he may have had a wife, of course, a lot of times that's just for appearances. But this man was absolutely disgusting. I won't get into it. He burned Rome to the ground because he wanted to expand something that he wanted to build, and he needed the area, so he conspired to have a fire set that nearly burned down all of Rome. Then, to cover his tracks, he blamed the Christians for it. And that's when the persecutions really started against the Christians. I mean, really bad. It heated up. There were four attempts on his part to kill his mother. One of them was he had this special boat made that was collapsible. So when she got out in the water so far, the thing just collapsed and sunk. She escaped that. She escaped 2 other times, and he tried to poison her. And finally, he just had some assassins go in and kill her and make it look like an accident. Blunt force trauma. She fell and hit her head, I guess. He finally killed her on the 4th attempt. Man, and talk about a good man here. Whew. How'd you like him running the country? Anyway, he was eventually run out of Rome, and in 68 AD, he committed suicide. Possibly the very year he condemned Paul to death. That's very interesting to me, because there's another man who was the man of sin. You got to remember, this office here that he holds at this time would be the man of sin. There was another, the actual other one was the son of perdition, hung himself, committed suicide at the death of Jesus Christ. And at the death of the Apostle Paul, we have this man of sin that commits suicide. I thought that was very interesting. Each one had something to do with the death of, one had something to do with the death of Christ, sold him out, was a traitor, and it would have been Nero that condemned Paul. So that's pretty much what I got for that. There's a lot more. Rome's history is, listen, the thing about Rome to remember is this. When John gets ushered forth into the future by about 2 millennia, it says he marvels, or not marvels, he has great admiration, and that's not admiring it in the positive sense. He's just amazed at what he sees. And I'll tell you what he sees. He sees a an empire, a kingdom that stretches as far as the known world at that time, down to 121 acres, and still running the world. That'd make anybody marvel. That'd make anybody just wonder, what in the world? And instead of a army, it's a bunch of fellas in, I don't know, crimson and purple, or red and purple flowing robes, and bizarre. Yet the Bible says it is the same woman. It is the same religion. And if you doubt that, you can get, there are several books you can get. The one I'm thinking of is Two Babylons by Hislop, where Hislop goes into all the Babylonian worship and the Babylonian religion, and shows you how they brought every bit of that over. And you can still see it today. Of course, you know I'm talking about the Roman Catholic Church. All right. Well, it's about 10 till. We're going to start church on time, Lord willing, or close to it. Any questions about what we covered? I know that was the briefest overlay of Rome, but